Hello, everybody. This is Nabil Salam, also known as the Nobel Player, and today I'm going to be giving you my review for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is the newest installment in the Apes franchise, taking place 300 years after the events of the Caesar trilogy up until now. We are actually following brand new characters. More specifically, our protagonist is Noah, who has his own community of apes that he lives with, and he has a brand new home that everyone resides in. And after an unfortunate incident and tragedy that happens, where he has completely lost everything, Noah has to go on a journey to go rescue his group of apes while being able to stand toe-to-toe with a brand new tyrannical leader known as Proximus Caesar. So just to give you a bit of a context, I really am a big fan of the Planet of the Apes film, starting from the 1968 original classic film with Charlton Heston, and I was a really huge fan of that Caesar trilogy, where we started with like Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes. An incredible, one-of-a-kind trilogy with an amazing lead character in Caesar, and it's a nice companion piece to the origins and prequel to building up the universe of what would be in the 1968 Charlton Heston movie. So going into this brand new film, I did not know what to expect going into this film. I'm a huge fan of the Caesar trilogy, very much so. How can you be able to follow what you could tell, as far as making a brand new trilogy off of it, while the Caesar trilogy had an amazing high in terms of its narrative storytelling? I saw this movie yesterday, and I will tell you that I was actually kind of disappointed by it. I thought it was just fine. It was okay. I feel like this is the kind of movie that has really great ideas, but its execution was really extremely lackluster and honestly kind of dull. But before I get to some of my criticisms, I want to first talk about the positives of this movie, the things that I really liked about this film. So, being as this is a film that takes place 300 years after the events of what Caesar had been able to build within, his own trilogy, the scope, the setting, the universe is so awe-inspiring, and it actually feels very consistent to what Caesar would have wanted after he was able to, be able to free all of the apes and be able to give all of these creatures a sense of living, a sense to run wild within the planet, really. And I really like, of course, when you look at the visual effects and motion capture work that has been able to be established within since Rise of the Planet of the Apes. How they really excel in all of those things. You can expect the same thing that you saw in this movie and you saw within the Caesar trilogy. The visual effects, motion capture work were on point. In fact, I would say it's even better actually than they've ever been with each and every one of these installments. And the thing that really impressed me the most is that when it comes to the motion capture performances, actually, not just how these actors are able to nail the movement and how to act like an ape, for instance, but the facial expressions the human actors have to provide. When it comes to the eyes and the mouth and some of the facial, some of the twitches that they might have in their facial expressions, it's extremely astonishing. And this is actually, a whole different team that we're looking into. The director of this film is Wes Ball, actually. So obviously he takes the reins of this film. And in the Caesar trilogy, we had, different directors, and we also had Andy Serkis, a motion capture genius, who actually was able to, be able to oversee, that series of movies. And with the new one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, in this one, Wes Ball really has a very nice eye towards making wonderful visual effects, very awe-inspiring, very convincing, and it's extremely astonishing. He will actually be doing a live-action adaptation of The Legend of Zelda, and as far as when he gets to the setting and the scope, and of course, again, the visual effects, he really nails it very, very well. I also really like the characters for the most part. I thought Noah, who's played by Owen Tariq, if I mispronounced that name, I must apologize, but he did a great job. He's extremely likable as a protagonist. We sort of see him, he's learning to become, the next leader, taking over from his father, and also, how is he able to actually look after his friends and his family that he cares about. He's not maybe as emotionally rich, maybe as Caesar was, if you just compare it to him. But as a protagonist, he's extremely likable. He gets you through the movie very well, and you really care about him for the most part. And I thought the villain of the film, Proximus Caesar, who's played by Kevin Durant, gives a wonderful performance. I like the concept of his character about how he really worships Caesar's morals and lessons, actually, but he's kind of doing it for his own agenda, actually. He has his own secret thing behind him that he wants to really go for within, this planet. And I like the concept of his personality, but the way they handle his character and actually the amount of screen time that he does have leaves a lot to be desired, and I'll get to that more in a bit. And I also really like how this film kind of deals in concept with the aftermath of Caesar's death. Like, what do some of these different group of apes, really believe in, for example? How do we question Caesar's teaching about, like, how did we as apes really evolve to become very smart? How do we, for example, when we're human beings, for instance, if we start to act like human beings, for example, what is right and what is wrong, for example? How do we actually take over a colony, for example? How do we rule over the planet, for instance? I like these ideas, honestly, especially when it comes from two different sides of the aisle. But by that point on, as I'm getting now more into the criticism of the movie, the premise of it feels by execution a bit lackluster, because I felt like this movie was just rehashing a lot of the same themes and plot points that we've seen in the previous movies that I feel like were done more effectively and done better. How many times can we see, for example, where the colony that we consider to be like the good colony, the protagonists, get, kidnapped, by a different group of different colony or different group of human beings, for example. How many times can we see, for example, where it's like, when, for example, we see in the poster, for example, a human character, for example, they interact with, and they understand, for example, like, what are the prioritization of human beings, for example, what are, the prioritization of apes being able to take over the planet, for example, really. How many times can we see, for example, where it's like, a leader trying to understand, for example, how can we think as a human being, for example? How do we continue to like grow? Essentially, it does feel like, again, rehashing certain concepts that we've already seen done before and done better in the previous films. I also will say that the pacing was extremely rough. It really honestly hurt a lot of my viewing experience for me, because it felt like it was this extremely one elongated journey to get to where we need to start with the conflict, and then also within unraveling the story, unraveling the mystery behind what happened within the 300 years prior to after Caesar's death, for example, and prior to the events of this movie. Like really, it just felt like, again, like it was taking itself way too much time, and I feel like that moment where it's like it feels like when it kind of goes through that whole notion, we could have spent more time really understanding a little bit more with like Proximus Caesar's motivations, actually, and how he really wants to take care of his colony of apes, for example. Or I would like to have seen more about like Noah and how he can really grow as a leader, for example. How he can take over his father's position and take care of everyone that he really cares for. I also felt like the human character that we introduced into this movie, her name is Nova, so it's a different Nova than the one that we saw in War for the Planet of the Apes, actually, since in this universe they established that like human girls that actually do live, for example, are named as Nova. So this Nova, for example, as we see, she's learned to befriend Noah, for instance, and we kind of get to see, the relationship and understand, for example, like, what is, her purpose in the universe, for example? How is she going to be able to contribute within the society, for example? Does she agree or disagree, with some of the apes, morals, for instance? And it's like, again, similar to what I said prior before, it seems that we've seen this already done before within some of the other human characters that Caesar, for instance, has interacted with beforehand. And at the same time, her character was a little bit like underwritten in that case. Her character just felt like something that was like made. So it's like as if the plot told her to do so, especially by the very end when we get to the climax of the movie, and her character does some decisions that I feel like are only just made just so we can set up a new, instead of this new trilogy, honestly. And it felt like we're left with a lot more questions and we're left with a lot more answers, for instance. And again, her character is similar to what we've seen done before in terms of her motivations and sort of her purpose within the story. And again, speaking about that ending as well, once you do get to that ending, for instance, it just kind of like ends, for example. Something does happen within the very end that they're trying to, set up within the later on within the series. That, in my opinion, what's gonna happen is that they're gonna go to a certain point where they're gonna actually remake the 1968 Charlton Heston movie, because in this film and even in the Caesar trilogy, they were contextualizing, certain themes, plot points, and the purposes of each character, whether it's the antagonist versus the protagonist, and what they're fighting to believe in. And again, that seems like a giant risk. It's gonna be interesting to see what they're gonna do going forward with that. But that's kind of like how I felt. It doesn't feel like as exciting maybe as I would have liked to have been, honestly, like I did how I felt with the Caesar trilogy. So overall, while I did really like a lot of what they were trying to establish with this film in terms of the setting and some of the characters, especially the protagonist Noah, I did feel like at the end though that it did feel like it's a rehash of ideas that we've seen done better. The pacing was kind of off for me, and the ending didn't feel as exciting maybe as I wanted it to be, especially with what they're trying to build up later on with the series, if they do decide to continue going forward. So if I had to give it on a rating on a scale of 0 to 10 tyrannical apes, I'm going to have to give the film a 6 out of 10 apes, because I did like what I saw for the most part, but I just felt like the story could have been a much more effective and stronger, especially when you have a really great protagonist and a great universe that they really established, especially at the beginning of the movie. So that's kind of my review of it. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below over here. Did you guys like the film? Did you not like the movie? Do you agree with my points? Do you not agree with some of my points? And also, if you guys like to see more videos in regards to movies, video games, talking about, reviews, live streams, reactions, for instance, I hope you guys can like the video. Hope you guys can subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of videos coming up down the line. I'm very excited to see where the channel can go. I really, really appreciate what I've been able to do so far, and I really appreciate you guys watching so far. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.